Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z. Martin, and tonight we are continuing our road trip series looking at the places that the Winchesters traveled, both real and fictional, and trying to figure out why those locations were chosen. We're doing that for season 13, but before we dive into that, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Elektra.
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and an editor, and I've been watching Supernatural since that very first episode.
Anna.
I'm Anna Kensing. I am also a writer, and I too have been watching Supernatural from the very beginning, dabbled in a little bit of fanfic, took a brief hiatus sort of in the middle, and then got back right into it, and spent the last few seasons completely obsessively watching it and rewatching it and still rewatching it.
As one does. And I'm Gail Z. Martin, and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance, but all my modern worlds are ones Sam and Dean could walk into and feel right at home. I came late to the party. I fell in love with the show halfway through season 11, binge watched 11 seasons in 4 months to start season 12 so I could live tweet it. And that became a wonderful obsession, and I fell down the rabbit hole and haven't hit bottom. Hope I never do. So let's talk about where the boys went in season 13. And as we've done before, no particular order. What particularly leapt out to you, or where do you want to start? Elektra?
Well, this is a season where we get to spend a lot of time in Apocalypse World. One of my favorite nasty, hellish places. It gets, because we're in Apocalypse World, we get the return of Charlie, who is dead, and Bobby, who is dead. And it's just so much fun because they keep bringing back these people who are gone. We get a new Michael, who's different and just yet another mean Michael. And it's just a really weird, nasty world until we find out exactly why it's Apocalypse World, or why we call it Apocalypse World, which is, it's the world where Sam and Dean were never born. And we keep going back there because just prior to the season, Mary was thrown in there, and they spend a good part of the season trying to figure out how to get in there to bring her back.
Yeah, and as with the way they did Purgatory, it's one of those masterpieces of creating a whole new world on limited budget where you don't have to see a whole lot to get the feeling that you're not in Kansas anymore, literally, and that you are someplace very different, which I thought was very imaginative of them.
It's a little bit of filtering and a lot of talking.
Well, yeah. And a lot of things that look half buried in sand and spires and things sticking up, and definitely looks like the end of the world has hit this place and this is all that's left. So yeah.
So we spend 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 8 or so episodes there, kind of sprinkled out through the season, and the last like 3 episodes naturally we primarily spend there. And yeah, I agree, like they did some, they put some filters on the lighting, much like they did for the scenes for Purgatory, to make it look really gray and dusty and grimy and unpleasant. And then at the very end, and I think episode 20 or 22, we see like a map spread out on a table somewhere of kind of how apocalypse, like this version of Earth, or at least of the Western Hemisphere, the North Americas, like ended up because Sam and Dean Winchester weren't born, and the fight between the demons and the angels happened, and the literal apocalypse came. So it's like, apparently it's a little bit like the Hunger Games, like North America has been sort of divided into districts, and there's like the East Coast, it has like a northeastern district and a southern sector. For some reason that's never explained, most of New England is designated as zone R4, which I don't know, seems kind of like a residential zoning code in like a city, but whatever. And Canada is designated as the northern ice fields, which might have been more of a statement of what it was like to be filming in Vancouver at the time that they were filming some of these episodes. So yeah, and Michael's Fortress, which apparently was meant to be, it was scripted as a concrete bunker in the desert, but the set designer actually built a church set instead. And so that appears to be located somewhere in the vicinity of Kansas or Nebraska. I mean, one could guess that perhaps it is set in Lebanon, on the site of the Men of Letters bunker, or where it would have been if the apocalypse hadn't happened. So, and then the West Coast is apparently described simply as the Rebels of California, but Texas keeps its name.
Of course it does.
Of course it does. And there is a wall along the US-Canada border from the Rebels of California to the Void, which is, I forget what the Void, Montana and Idaho are just called the Void. Sorry, guys. And then there's a US-Mexico border wall as well.
Well, those sorts of districts always happen whenever you have a dystopic future.
Right?
It's one of those things that happen whenever, the world has no water or the world is flooded. You divide the world up into districts and the cities fall into disrepair and the people go nuts. It's how dystopias work.
Right.
And there's never an explanation for them.
Yeah. Well, the location that kind of captured my imagination starts right out in episode 1, and it's North Cove, Washington. Now, North Cove does and doesn't exist. North Cove did exist, but it was lost to shore erosion, and it's now under a number of feet of water. So, and that happened fairly recently, like in the last 20 years. So I think it's very interesting that they picked a town that existed, but then got erased. And I'm sure that it's a small town. They can't have just done it by accident and find a place that's real. But I thought that was very interesting that it didn't exist, sort of like Schrodinger's town.
And this is the town where Kelly and Castiel were hiding out, where Jack is born.
Yeah.
Where that lovely cabin is sitting by the lake, way out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. I think that there's still some parts, some remnants of North Cove that's haven't quite fallen into the ocean yet. But yeah, it's got the fastest eroding, or that area has the fastest eroding shoreline on the entire West Coast, and it loses 100 feet of land every year. They're starting to, sort of reclaim it. They're learning that building, that creating big concrete jetties or breakers isn't really working, but what might help is putting smaller bits of like rubble and stones and things like that, and that because those things can sort of like get washed in the tidal surf and calm it in some sort of way. I don't really know. So like the remnants of North Cove is trying to keep what little bit of it they've still got left. And there's been some progress. I think that they've lost less of the land, but yeah, like there was definitely much more of it. And there's still parts of the water where at low tide you can see like exposed piping from houses that have been found and things like
Well,
that.
let's hope that the pirate fast food restaurant where Jack showed up naked is still there, just for old time's sake.
Right? The employee of the month picture on the wall of the restaurant, Pirate Pete's, was one of Supernatural's location scouts. He's named Pete, and so he might have been the one who figured out. He might have been the one who decided to place this in North Cove and got a nod to being employee of the month at Pirate Pete's drive-in fast food restaurant.
Maybe we can get somebody who's visiting in the area, driving through Forks to stop by there and see if it's still there. That's a big tourist destination.
So what else? Elektra, back to you.
Well, they were back in Fall River again. One of
A lot.
A
favorite
lot.
stops.
Yeah, like 5 different episodes. What is with Fall River?
Well, as you mentioned, there are haunted places there and ghosts and creepy things. And, you know, maybe somebody on the crew is from there. So they keep going back. But it's a super fun place. And there they were, back and back again.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well-
back in the Needham Asylum, which was Crowley's like demon lair, and then became Asmodeus's demon lair, and then became Lucifer's demon lair, and then was eventually abandoned, I guess, or at least for now.
Asmodeus, the Kentucky Fried Prince of Hell.
Mhm. Well, and Fall River has the Oak Grove Cemetery where Lizzie Borden was buried. It's got a haunted forest and a haunted nightclub and a haunted ice house and haunted bridges and armories. So yeah, it's a really creepy town. But
It's a great place to visit,
yeah,
especially if you're a
Set up
demon.
shop.
but you know, Fall River, Massachusetts, Lebanon, Kansas, they're a long distance apart for as many times as they visit.
Well, yes. I mean, like, because like things are happening, right? With Crowley and Asmodeus and you know, Lucifer and the minions of hell, right? Things are happening in the Needham Asylum in Fall River, while other things are happening in Lebanon in the bunker with Sam and Dean. So although I think you're right, I think it's a little bit surprising. I don't know, it's sort of surprising and it's not surprising. Like on the one hand, like Crowley being so far away from, you know, his bromance, from his best friend, his BFF Dean, right? Back when they were demons together. And then on the other hand, maybe getting as far away as he can from those flannel wearing lumberjacks who foil his every plan.
Well, in that same second episode, they go to Jasper, Wyoming, which, as far as I could find, doesn't exist. There is, of course, Casper, Wyoming, like the friendly ghost, but Google did not recognize a Jasper, Wyoming. So why they didn't just stick with Casper, whether they thought it was too much of a joke for the guys who hunt monsters to go to Casper, I don't know. But Jasper is apparently fictional.
Well, they also, so I think this is where this field, I think, is where the fake Donatello takes Jack to open up a Hellgate. So, you know, fake Donatello, who is Asmodeus, was wearing Donatello, fake Casper, Wyoming. I don't know, maybe it was planned. Maybe it was planned that way.
Was that the one where he takes Jack out to the field to get him to try to bring those really creepy creatures that we never hear about again?
Yes, the Shadim, yes.
Yeah. I kept waiting for them to like make an appearance in some sort of demon horde somewhere.
Right?
And we never saw them again. It was like, well, they were too hard to get out of cold storage, so we just left them there.
Well, or Jack ended up in Apocalypse World and he was out of reach. And we were all focusing on trying to get, well, Mom back, but you know, there was, where the heck is Jack? We got to get him back first.
And maybe they're just run-of-the-mill monsters in Apocalypse World or the Bad Place, which we'll get to in a bit. But also in this episode, the boys and Jax finally crash in a motel on the road from North Cove. They're on their way back to the bunker, and Dean goes to a bar where he chats up a barmaid who also is pretending is, you know, somebody that Asmodeus is wearing. And apparently the name of the bar where he goes to is the Black Spur Bar, which was previously used in season 10 and was located at 156 Knife River Road in Beulah, North Dakota. And then they repurposed a little monkey figurine on the counter of the bar, which was previously seen in the Harville's Roadhouse. So it's unclear whether this is the same Black Spur Bar, because, I mean, North Cove, Washington to Lebanon, Kansas. Would you drive through Beulah, North Dakota? You could. You wouldn't necessarily have to, but maybe it's another Black Spur Bar because it is really a great name for a bar.
Well, and that monkey gets around because it's in a lot of the bars. It's in Rocky's bar, in Dean's Head, and it's in Heaven. sitting right there on the table with Bobby when he gets to Harvell's Roadhouse in heaven. So that monkey gets around.
Yeah.
He's got to be a joke or something.
My headcanon is Jared and Jensen have both said they have storage lockers in Vancouver of all the stuff they kept from Supernatural for presumably the reboot. I swear, I bet the monkey is in there.
Oh, surely.
I think they kept the monkey.
Yeah.
If it's not at the Family Business Brewing, well, I think somebody would have posted that picture by now. So what else? Back to you, Elektra.
Back to me. Goodness, I'm trying to figure out where it was. They ended up back to meet Missouri again.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to remember where that was. And my notes are not good. Where was she?
Omaha.
Oh, come on, help me.
Omaha?
She was in where? Damn. My notes are missing that. They went to meet Missouri to see patients.
I think she was in Omaha and Patience was in Georgia.
Okay. My notes are unclear on who's where. But they ended up spending quite a bit of time in Georgia with Patience before they escorted her over and dropped her with Sheriff Jody and brought her into the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's nice that we get Bobby and Charlie back from the dead, but we lose Missouri,
who was so important to the whole family canon. I went to Missouri is where it all starts.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was interesting. In Omaha, there is a cemetery chapel that theoretically has a large black cloud that forms in it and attacks people. So I thought that was kind of freaky and interesting. There is also a heartbeat bridge where you can hear a heartbeat for no good reason. And what they call the Hatchet School, which was a school where back in the day, the headmaster went nuts and killed everybody with a hatchet. So Omaha, quite the tourist attraction. But in Buckhead, Georgia, there was nothing that I could find that was haunted. And of course, Buckhead's kind of an upscale suburb of Atlanta. I could find haunted stuff in Atlanta, but Buckhead, I guess, is too cool to have haunted stuff, or the ghost can't afford to haunt there.
That's the whole point, though, was the Missouri's son took his family to some place where there was nothing haunted because he was walking away from the supernatural. And he just wanted his daughter to grow up and go to college and not have to deal with any of that.
Yeah.
So maybe that was deliberate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did pick that Buckhead in particular, specifically for that. Yeah. To keep her away from Missouri's influence.
Because if you look at what's haunted in and around the Atlanta area, it's all around Atlanta, but not Buckhead. So, I mean, maybe there are sigils. Who knows? Maybe somebody did a spell, but
Men of Letters came through, and they were protecting somebody, and they put those sigils around to keep the monsters out.
Maybe it was James's last sort of, like nod to the reality of his mother's legacy, right? Like in order to protect his daughter, he was like, "That's it, Buckhead. No supernatural here."
But there's a really big buried salt ring.
Maybe. One day we're going to have to talk about what all of these bars where people are throwing axes means to the reality of, like, hatchet killers.
Mm-hmm.
And why they're trying to nurture all these hatchet killers and make sure that they can throw them with such accuracy.
Such good aim.
Yeah, and they sell them really nice, sharp, well-balanced axes. So they can.
And alcohol, what could possibly go wrong?
Right?
I don't know. I thought that this was a crazy idea, but now they're everywhere. So
it used to just be a Renaissance festivals.
The Renaissance festivals don't let you do anything with anything sharp.
No. It
There's
practically bounces off the wood.
Yeah, they sell kids boffer weapons. So yeah, this is something we need to talk about at some point.
I think this is the same theory of taking the stripper pole out of the strip clubs and putting it into like the dance studio for the housewives to, like have exercise classes. You take the hatchet fights that just sort of randomly break out among drunk, hoodlums, and you put it into, upscale kind of, it's just fun and games, and yeah, I don't know, and an opportunity to make money for
Get out of the lumberjack bars and move it uptown,
right.
gentrifying those hatchets.
Gentrifying hatchets and pole dancing. I think it's the same thing. It's about like making money, right? It's about
yes.
And in the same bar, and you don't want to know the imagery I'm now getting there. Oh yeah,
I want to see that
side of the bar and the other side of the bar. And
hey, I had a friend who threw herself a 45th birthday party at one of those learn how to pole dance studios. And I couldn't go, but I heard from everybody else, A, they had a blast, and B, they were so sore afterwards with a whole new respect for pole dancers, because it is an athletic endeavor.
I believe it.
was it a co-ed party?
I don't think so. It was just, a hen party for a birthday party, but we digress.
All right, back to Supernatural.
Yes, now that we've hit stripper poles and hatchets, where else?
Well, that fits right in. Well, let's not forget the Empty, which comes in quite a few places after Castiel, dies, and stops in and visits the Empty for a bit, negotiates, and then gets sucked back.
Is it negotiation, or is it just being a really, really, really annoying?
Well, there's that too, but he does talk to the Empty about what it is and what's going on, and the whole, I'm the Empty, and you see me as a person, but I could be anyone, and I'm just a manifestation of something from your subconscious, whereas I'm really like this great primordial thing that you can't really process. So I'm appearing as someone so that you're more comfortable. And it's all in your head, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Thus allowing them to bring back beloved actors and actresses to be the Empty.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But I thought the black squishy guy who drew the smile on his face, the oil slick guy, was really kind of primal terror. He was scary.
Very. Whereas, Meg was much more fun in negotiating.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I thought it was funny watching Castiel annoy his way out of the Empty, because as a parent, I have seen, the age where a kid just decides they're going to get on your nerves to the point that you have to give them what they want because they have figured that out. And Cass does that so perfectly on the I'm just going to drive you nuts until you give in. So I thought that was kind of brilliant, and Misha played that and played the two parts very well. But yeah, the Empty was a strange place.
We had it like this particular season had so many like weird non-Earth places, right? So the Apocalypse world, we spent a couple episodes back in heaven again. The Empty, and then also the Bad Place, which was pretty freaking terrifying and sort of like Stranger Things-esque in turn, like it's like the upside down of Stranger Things. It has like huge legged spider monsters and like really big things that, and like forests that hide things that chase after you, and it has a completely different set of filters to make it look like not as gray as either Purgatory or the Apocalypse world, but more sort of like dark and blue and black and sort of bruised looking, in a really like deeply scary way.
Yet a different filter that gave it sort of a rich jungly look almost.
Yeah,
Underwater.
exactly.
It was
Yeah.
lots of deep blues and greens in there.
Exactly. Deep
It,
blue
and
greens.
you couldn't mistake it for anything else.
Which is one of the things that I really like. I really feel like they gave the lighting director just like free reign for figuring out all of these different places. More so than some of the other seasons. You know, I mean, like this has always been a thing for Supernatural. Like the lighting of it has always been amazing and has always been creative and has always really like made the episodes. But this particular season, there's been such a huge variety of different lighting techniques to create a sense of place, because they didn't really do like either, like both, I think the Bad Place and the Empty and the Apocalypse World. I think a lot of that was probably done like on sound stages, and not so much like, you know, like this is less about like locations and more about sort of tightly controlling and with lighting and with, you know, sort of certain like set pieces.
Parts of Apocalypse World were just like forest and pathways.
Yeah, and apparently parts in Wayward Sisters, parts of that were drone shots, that actual drone footage of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Although, you know, like the rest of it is filmed in Vancouver, but they used drone shots that are from actually Sioux Falls, South Dakota in the Wayward Sisters episode, which I don't know how many times they do that, but yeah,
like, they actually established the fact that they were in Sioux Falls.
They never bothered to establish the fact
that changed to actually establish that. Because, you know, maybe they were going to get a pilot out of it and they wanted it to actually be set in Sioux Falls. That they were going to shoot in Canada because it was cheaper. But they were going to pretend it was there and it was based there.
Yeah. Well, and that big wrecked boat that they opened the rift on was a location that existed. So I don't know that they shot on it, but they certainly got the externals of a real place. Mm-hmm. It didn't look like it was in great shape to take a camera crew or your actors, but as an exterior shot, it definitely existed.
It was great. And it doesn't take a lot of imagination to shoot the exterior of it and then, you know, shoot your people walking up to it, and then the next shot they're inside. Or they're walking along a path with a railing.
Yeah.
Talking about what terrible shape the ship's in. It's good writing and good camera work. We also spend an inordinate amount of time in hell, and we get to see yet more prison cells.
Yes.
And we get to see Kentucky Fried Asmodeus there, and where he keeps his prisoners.
Yes.
He is one not very nice guy. He was the weakest of the princes of hell, and he became the strongest. So, which
I think is just having seen Jeffrey Vincent Parise at a convention, and he is just the sweetest, nicest guy, kind of like, you know, the guy who plays Death. Just totally not what you'd expect. And he's sitting there drumming and just really chill. And it's like, wow, so not Asmodeus.
Well, they are actors.
This is true, but
and
you know,
they do get good ones, you know. We keep saying over and over, the actors on this show are really good at it. Yeah.
And I just love to see how different they can make themselves. So that's always fun.
Turns out Death is actually not a demon or a primordial being. He's just a guy who plays one on TV.
And skips at the convention across the stage. It's kind of fun. But Madison, Wisconsin has, we went there in episode 4, and it had a lot of haunted places. Of course, a sanitarium, which all of those are haunted if they still exist, and haunted bars. It has several campus buildings for the university there that were built on a cemetery. What could possibly go wrong? And
I
there's,
thought we figured out you don't do that anymore.
has nobody seen Poltergeist? Do you not know how this works? But there's also a theater, and lots of places have haunted theaters, but this one in particular, they referred to the ghost as being Putty Man, that he looked like he had been made out of putty. And I thought that was particularly creepy. Not just a shadow or footsteps or, disembodied voices, but this guy who looks like he was made out of putty. That just kind of grossed me out.
That's pretty gross. I actually really didn't like silly putty when I was growing up, particularly because like one of the things that you could do is you could like spread it over newsprint and you could like transfer newsprint onto the silly putty. And then I looked at that, I'm like, this is gross. I'm not going to play with this anymore. So a putty
Had a weird texture.
A putty man, no thank you, gross, it's scary.
Gail, the town of Crystal Cove, Oregon, where the Scooby team comes and meets up with Sam and Dean and Castiel because, well, Scooby-Doo.
And of course, Crystal Cove is the town that's used in the Scooby-Doo series, at least in the later versions.
And you can't like trip over a mailbox there without finding out that it's haunted.
Right.
Or at least somebody is doing something nefarious and pretending it's haunted so that they can steal all the mail that contains Social Security checks that they're cashing.
Well, it's
usually from grandmothers. Sorry.
It's usually shady real estate developers.
Right.
It's somebody stealing from someone. It's the way it all works.
Although, as I forget, I think it was Sam points out, there are way easier and better scams for real estate than the ones that the ghosts do in Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time this season on the Pacific Northwest, right? Like, so that episode, the North Cove, Washington, at the beginning. We're in Portland, Oregon toward the end when Rowena is killing people before their time in order to trap Death, in order to get Death to negotiate with Death to get Death to resurrect Crowley. We're in Seattle when the boys are trying to find the blood of a saint, which what they really need is the blood of a most holy man, but they don't know what that means. And so they're like, I don't know. Sam's like, I don't know, but the blood of a saint. They end up getting the blood from the most holy man, who turns out to just be, it's an honorary title from the Pope. But yeah, there's a lot of Pacific Northwest locations in this season, more than usual, I think.
Well, and they're in the Northeast quite a bit too, between Fall River and they're in Rhode Island, but not in Providence. They're in Portsmouth.
Right, which is weird because that episode is like so H.P. Lovecraft. Like it's with the tentacle monster and the rift between the worlds, and it's like a clear homage to H.P. Lovecraft, and it's a callback to previous episodes that do more specifically mention H.P. Lovecraft, but it's set in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, and not Providence, Rhode Island, which is
right.
just
but Rhode Island is the size of a postage stamp.
Well,
it's not like HP stayed in Providence and never moved. I mean, Portsmouth is like a 10-minute drive.
Okay, fair.
We're not talking about like Pennsylvania, where it's a 7-hour drive to get from one end to the other. You blink and you're through all of Rhode Island.
Having driven through Rhode Island and like blinked, basically missed it. Yes, you're absolutely right.
I live in Delaware. The only thing about Delaware is it's a bigger state than Rhode Island.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's not saying much. I mean, I can drive to New Jersey in 10 minutes and come back to Delaware and then drive out to Maryland in 15. It's a very small state.
Well, now they also went to Dodge City, and
had a lot of fun.
They had a lot of fun. Dean was just over the moon. But
it had a great motel.
Oh my God, yes. The motel is so great.
But in one of the historic articles I saw about Dodge City, it was called Hell on the Plains, because it was so lawless and so full of violence and of course, haunted saloons and the infamous Boot Hill. So, that was a perfect place. But yes, that hotel with the steer horns and Dean going down and naming all the cowboys. That was perfect.
Dean didn't get a lot of joy in this season. He spent a lot of the season being really down, and so
well, he was the guy like in control about, well, we can't make friends with Jack too much just in case he turns out to like be a loose cannon and we have to figure out how to kill him.
Oh, sure, totally understandable, right?
And Sam is trying to be like the dad figure.
Yeah.
So
yes,
he wanted to be a dad figure, but he didn't want to have to like kill Jack later. So he was really screwed up by all of that.
Yes, totally understandable. There was a lot going on, a lot of trauma going on for Dean. Lost his mom, lost Cass at the very beginning of the season. Worried about Jack going, turning out to be a apocalyptic killer. Everything. So the moments when he's happy at this motel, when he's in the Scooby-Doo episode, it's just when he like runs back in the bad place to the campfire and he grabs the lizard on the stick, because Dean apparently that was ad-libbed by Jensen. It was not in the script, but Jensen was like, Dean would leave food behind. Are you kidding? He didn't think that they would use it. He was like, whatever, they use it, they don't use it. But Dean does not leave food behind. So,
no, Sam, it tastes like lizard.
It apparently did actually taste like chicken, because it was chicken, like chicken attached to a taxidermied lizard to make it look like lizard, but apparently meat itself was actually chicken.
Well, I've had alligator, which is kind of lizard.
Yeah, alligator's delicious.
Yeah, it's not that big of a difference. They also went to Middlebury Township, Indiana, which is close to Elkhart, Indiana, where there is a Winchester mansion, but it's not that Winchester.
Yeah, no, it's not Winchester, California.
Is crazy.
Yes, but it's in California, not Indiana.
Oh,
yeah.
That Winchester mansion. Okay.
Yeah, not the Winchester rifle lady crazy mansion. This is another Winchester mansion, which is also haunted, but it is actually in Elkhart, Indiana, which is close to Middlebury Township. So there you have it.
Winchester, Indiana is also where like 2/3 of the musical instrument manufacturer are located. Like all of the student trumpets and saxophones and flutes and things like that you rent for your kid when in 4th or 5th grade when they're learning how to play, those are made in Elkhart, Indiana.
Interesting.
That's different. We also spent an inordinate amount of time in heaven, like hanging out in the throne room with Lucifer, which was different.
Yeah.
As he tried to prove that, yeah, I can totally like do the heaven thing and I can make angels. Yeah, I totally can make angels. Just get me what I want and I can make angels for you. I can. Yeah, just.
Sure.
Well, yeah, he was playing the flim flam man with them.
Yeah.
And they were very easy to flim.
Well, yeah, they were angels and they're followers, not leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And he is a leader of something. And he went up there and decided he was a leader of angels until he got bored because nobody got him an iPad to play with. Because Lucifer's a toddler.
Yeah. And that's another set that was very effective while being very simple. What does God's throne room look like? Well, it could have been over the top, kind of like in St. Peter's Basilica with all the gold and everything. It's just white. It's white on white on white. Kind of a cool sculptured look, but very white.
What makes it impressive would have been all of the angels in white behind him, just not doing anything and being angels.
Mm-hmm.
Except there weren't very few angels left in heaven. But I think that's what they were trying to give you the impression of.
It would have had that Christmas pageant look.
Yeah. What makes it impressive is the angels, the personnel, and they just weren't there.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was empty.
Mm-hmm.
And all the bits of heaven that we saw, other than like, the hallway where all the bobbies were being surly, were empty.
I do like
And
all
there
those
weren't
stories.
enough angels to keep the parishioners, under control.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you call the people in heaven.
The dead people.
They're not really just the dead people. They're
Those-
I don't know, the people staying there. What do you call the people staying at hotels? They're not staff, they're guests. I don't know. So the people who are guests in heaven, there's nobody there to keep them happy and placated, which is
Yeah.
what they're supposed to be in heaven. They're supposed to be happy and get what they want. And they didn't have enough staff to do that. So, they got annoyed and surly. Well, it's the one thing we knew.
Yeah, that's true. Well, there were actually more souls in the empty at this point than there seemed to be in heaven. So more action there.
Well, yeah, but you don't go to the empty unless you're an angel or a demon. You go to purgatory.
But all of those
you're a
angels
monster.
that aren't in heaven anymore are now in the empty.
Well, they're for lack of a better word, they're dead angels.
Mm-hmm.
Angels that have been killed in the war. And there
Mhm.
was a lot of war within the factions. And when you kill an angel, they're dead for good.
Mm-hmm.
And there
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be a way to renew them unless you've got Chuck around. And Chuck didn't seem to be in an angel making mood when he was around.
Well, and Jack kind of tried, and we don't know if when he really melded with Amara and became the new god, if he could have repopulated angels, or if he just decided that
There
it
no
was,
need.
or it,
He seemed to have
they were
fixed
dangerous.
heaven. And he either fixed heaven so that they were separate from the guests, or he fixed heaven so there was no need for more angels than were already there.
Yeah, I'm thinking Jack didn't have real good experiences with any of the angels except Cass, so he might not have really been in a mood to bring a whole bunch of them back and just set up to do this all over again.
Right. Yeah.
There was a lot of bureaucracy there. He may have been unwilling to recreate the bureaucracy.
Also,
Yeah.
angels are dicks, and I'm pretty sure Jack's heard Dean say that. So
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were.
Well, and okay, he might have had a good experience with Gabriel as well, but with Lucifer,
Michael is no fun.
Michael's no fun. I don't know why you'd repopulate when you finally got rid of those guys.
Well, he met a whole bunch of them in Apocalypse World, and they were no fun.
right. And Gabriel's like entertaining from the outside, but when you're watching him, you don't want more than one of him either.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Gabriel started out like curled up in a corner crying all the time. He had a serious case of PTSD.
Yeah, understandably.
Yeah,
But
but he started out traumatized, and he wasn't really the same old Gabriel we used to see when Jack got to meet him. Jack never got to meet the happy-go-lucky, crazy, let's just throw some fireworks into the mix and see what happens kind of Gabriel.
Let's
Cast a
kill
rock.
Dean. Let's kill Dean 365 ways and then have Sam spend 6 months trying to find him. Like Gabriel,
just for fun.
Gabriel's not, he's not fun.
Well, but
He thinks he is.
I'm the trickster, and I'm going to do all this crazy stuff to convince you that I am a trickster,
Mm-hmm.
because that's part of the package.
He's a bad dude. Gabriel.
Well, there's
He
one
had
more.
some issues, yeah. We just liked him so much that
Yeah.
it's hard for us to see how bad he is sometimes.
Yeah. And now we've had a trickster show up on the Winchesters. And it's Richard Spite Jr. So the where that goes. But one place I wanted to make sure I mentioned, because it was just so creepy, is in episode 9. They go to Mankato, Minnesota. And there is, of course, a haunted cemetery, but they also have a cemetery where there are rumors of human sacrifice. There's a hospital, pardon me, with the ghost of an evil doctor. There are rumors of a ghost devil, and there's a hell road. I mean, some towns just have it all.
Don't they just?
Yes.
And in Oshkosh, Nebraska, one of the ghosts there is there are mirror people who live in the mirrors, and people see entities in the mirrors. And I also thought that was just creepy. Bloody Mary aside, things living in the mirrors, I can do without that.
Yeah, no thanks.
So what didn't we mention? Did we leave out any of your favorites?
So I didn't look into the actual history, but we did spend an episode in Grand Junction, Colorado, in an abandoned house where a sadistic doctor, are there any other kind, experimented on and lobotomized his patients. And this apparently is a reused set. So the set of his mental health center was previously used as Dr. Eleanor Viziak's mansion in San Francisco during the episode Like a Virgin in season 6. Specifically, like the big staircase and the stained glass window that features Joan of Arc was in both of those episodes. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then also in that episode that you mentioned, where they go to Mankato, Minnesota. So Jack wants to take Kaya to the Wind Caves. So this episode, according to the Supernatural Wiki, takes place in Bismarck, North Dakota, in Mankato, Minnesota, and in Lebanon, Kansas, and then in Buckhead, Georgia, where Patience lives, and Sioux Falls and the Bad Place and whatever. But Wind Cave National Park is a real place. It is in South Dakota, in Custer County, and it's a sacred place for the Lakota people and other tribes of the Black Hills region of South Dakota, and it's apparently the site where the first people entered the world after the world's creation. So it does seem like a place where the border between the worlds would be thinner, and where one could dream walk into the Bad Place if one really wanted to go there.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, folks, once again, we have plumbed some interesting depths here with season 13 and found some cool stuff. But thank you so much for being here. And before we sign off, tell everybody where we can find you online. Elektra?
Untilmidnight.com. And I am Elektra at on Mastodon. Sorry, Wandering Shop at Mastodon.
Okay. Anna?
You can find me at annakensing.com and at the various social media places that are some variation of Anna Kensing, including TikTok, which is at Anna Kensing Books.
I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. I'm on a lot of social media, and they're all a variation of those names. So if you spell them right, you'll find me. I write for the Winchester Family Business blog, and I run the Supernatural TFWNC group here on Facebook, but most of the time I'm here on Continual. So thank you so much for another great panel. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up on Continual, so we'll see you online.